Welcome, everybody. This is welcome to the meeting of the IJB and welcome to Grangemouth Community Education Centre. We haven't been here for a while, but just to say to everyone, when you want to speak, if you press the button and a red light will come on. We can only have, I think, is it 3 on at a time. If your microphone flashes green, it just means you just need to wait until the next person has spoken. But we'll crack on. We've got as usual a full agenda. So first of all, do we have any apologies for the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Robert Clark, Kenneth Laurie, Ross McGuffey, Victoria McRae and Andrew Murray.
Thank you. And just open up for any declarations of interest. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Just a transparency statement I would like to make in relation to agenda item 7, particularly in respect of partnership funds. I have a connection to the item due to my position as Chief Executive Officer of Falkirk's Mental Health Association, who receive partnership funds. However, having applied the objective test, I do not consider that I have an interest to declare.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I'll move us on to the minutes. As ever, I'm not proposing to go through it page by page, but just to ask if there's any corrections to the minute. No, and I think everything that is in relation to matters arising is in the agenda. So are we happy to approve the minute?
Agreed.
Thank you. And I'll bring us to our action log, and I'll pass to Gail for any items she wants to highlight.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll see in the action log, we've got an item onto the intermediate care facility, and this is linked into the review of bedded care, which is now within our budget savings programme. We also have reference to reports that are going to Council NHS Forth Valley Board, asking them to agree the amendments to the integration scheme. I can confirm that the NHS Board considered that on Tuesday this week, and they approved the integration scheme, and Falkirk Council considered it yesterday and also approved the integration scheme. The next item is around the transfer of children's and justice social work services, and there's a report on the agenda today about that. The budget working group action is ongoing. There is an update report on the agenda today, and a further the budget paper will come to IJB in March this year. In terms of non-voting members and arrangements for the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee, there's a report on the agenda today. And the changes to the IJB standing orders and the detailed review is ongoing and will come in June. And in terms of the dedicated deep dive with the board on budget pressures related to prescribing, I could confirm there was a development session earlier on in January, which included that detailed deep dive on prescribing budget pressures.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the action log? No? Okay. Right, I'll move us straight on to the Chief Officer report and back over to Gail.
Thank you, Chair. So you've got a report in front of you which highlights some local updates, regional and national updates, and I'll go through a couple of these for you. So our budget savings consultation went live on the 17th of January. It is ongoing for a 6-week period, and it's seeking to get the views of our stakeholders on the potential impacts of the proposed budget savings, which will help, the feedback will help inform the decision making that will take place in March this year. Pleased to say we've already had a really good response. There's been lots of respondents already, which is really positive. In terms of another local update, which isn't in the paper today, but I wanted to highlight, was the as a result of the red weather warning last weekend, the exceptional work of all of our staff in terms of helping people to stay safe in our communities. I think there's so many different stories of staff within the partnership and our partners going above and beyond to keep our most vulnerable people safe and secure, despite very difficult personal circumstances for the staff that are involved. So a really big thanks from myself to all the staff. In terms of the next item around Adult Support and Protection Inspection Programme, Falkirk Partnership's been selected to participate in a national supported evaluation workstream. This will allow us to work with partners, including the Care Inspectorate, Healthcare Improvement Scotland and HMI, His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, to help to develop the programme of Adult Support and Protection Inspection. In terms of regional updates, I'm delighted to let colleagues know that following escalation of the out-of-hours service, which operates across Forth Valley a few years ago, it's now hosted by Falkirk Health and Social Care Partnership since 2023, and it's now formally been stood down from national scrutiny following what's been reported as substantive and satisfactory progress. So that's a really good feedback, and it's down to the hard work and dedication of our managerial and clinical staff in that team. So thank you very much to that team. I mentioned earlier that we did a joint IJB development session on both primary care and prescribing on the 18th of January, and the feedback we've had from that has been it's been very well received, and hopefully it helped members get more of an understanding of some of the challenges and how we can work collaboratively together, whole system around that. There was the fatal accident investigation determination was released on the 17th of January, which, and firstly I must say, our sympathies go to the families of those involved. It highlighted a number of individual and process issues related to both cases. I would say that there's a huge amount of work that has happened since that time in terms of improvements, and 21 actions have been implemented since 2018, which specifically related to the 3 recommendations. 20 of these are complete, and 2 new actions have been identified following the determination report being released. There was also an HMIPS inspection in 2023, which evidenced significant improvement in these services. The work is ongoing, and it's intended that we'll bring a detailed report to the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee in March, which will provide more detail to members at that point in time. In terms of national updates, again, it's not in the report, but I wanted to mention there was an announcement on the 23rd of January, which was after the date of the report being submitted, that the National Care Service element of the National Care Service Bill won't now be included, but the bill is still intended to progress to include Anne's Law, which allow people in care homes to receive visits from loved ones, even in restricted measures, and the National Social Work Agency. There'll also be a non-statutory advisory board set up, and it will also include rights to breaks for unpaid carers. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail, and I think there's some really interesting work that has been carried out and is going forward, and I think the work in the adult protection national work stream, I think, will be really interesting, and I think certainly I think well done to everybody who's been involved in the work around the out of hours services and the progress that has been made. You know, particularly in relation to, we've had I would say a really challenging winter. And it's testament to the dedication of everybody involved that progress has been able to be made. I did want to touch on a couple of things in relation to the interest in work in relation to prison healthcare teams' work, and I think, you know, these are obviously we took the operational management over, and I can't quite remember the date, but you know, and we're starting to receive updates about the work that's involved, and I think that work in terms of patient engagement with those in Glenorchy, I think is a really interesting piece of work and really important in how we support the healthcare of people who are within our prison system, and the Forth Valley population health and care strategy. And I think any of us who are on the board have seen a number of iterations and discussions around this, and it really is a crucial piece of work for the current and future health of the citizens of Falkirk. So I really look forward to members of the board being engaged in that, and the consultation in relation to that, and its final version, and how that will link with our work. But I'm going to open up for any questions or comments, and I can see Michelle. Michelle.
Thank you, Fiona. Really, for those of you that don't know, I chair NHS Forth Valley's Clinical Governance Committee, and I was also responsible at PNR escalation for giving assurance to the board on out of hours. So I'm aware, very familiar with the work that's taking place now. So I just really more or less want to say what both Gail and Fiona have said about well done to the team involved. And I think that the letter from Sir Lewis Ritchie is testament just to the excellent work that has taken place. So well done to everyone involved.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to add my thanks to all the staff and all the work that went on Friday and subsequently following that major storm. There's been a huge amount of work done and people went above and beyond, and it's testament to that dedication that there were so few injuries or fatalities or other issues that were reported. So well done to everyone who was part of that. Also, though, wanted to ask a wee bit about the National Care Service, and particularly in relation to the Advisory Board. I think there are issues around just what the nature of that Advisory Board will be and what who it's going to be advising. And I wonder if you could say a little more about our engagement from the health and social care side to try to make sure that this advisory board comes out as something that actually gives added value.
Through yourself, Chair. So obviously the details of the advisory board are still emerging, so we don't quite know the detail in terms of how it will operate, etc. What I would say is there is regular engagement with chief officers included in the conversations with Scottish Government, and there's a meeting next week with the Minister for Mental Health and chief officers, which I understand is on the next steps of the National Care Service. I would expect that might come up. So I suppose the answer is the channels are open to support the conversations which we're participating in, but the detail is yet to emerge.
Thank you for that. And I'm very pleased to hear about the actions that are being taken in relation to the prisons and in relation in particular to Polmont. That was two dreadful incidents, and all our hearts go out to the families.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? No, Councillor Hannah actually made me think of a question there. Thank you. In relation to the other elements of the National Care Service, and obviously one is in relation to right to a break and Anne's Law, and I suppose that is relation to the engagement of the IJB in taking those forward.
Yeah, so again, I suppose my answer is probably quite similar in terms of those regular meetings with chief officers and Scottish Government, and I think it's really important that we link IJB in with that as and when we can. So we'll continue to keep you updated, and if there's opportunities to feed in, we'll invite that to happen.
Thank you, Gail. If there's no other questions, I will move us on to our next report, which is the Budget Monitoring Report, and pass over to Marie.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Budget Monitoring Report as agenda item number 6. This gives the projected position for integrated and set-aside budgets based on month 7 to October 2024 for social care and up to month 8, November 2024 for health-related budgets. I always think it's important to have the latest position available for each side. For social care, there is a projected overspend of 7.73 million following the draw of 1.058 million from reserves since the last reported position. Integrated health budgets are projected to underspend at this time by £958,000. The net integrated projected overspend is 6.772 million. The budget in relation to set-aside services is currently expected to overspend by 7.078 million. The set-aside overspend will be managed by NHS Forth Valley as in previous years. 3.3 and Appendix 5 detail the agreed efficiencies for this financial year and show a projected underachievement of 3.4 million against the targets set. These under-recoveries are included in the relevant service positions reported within the report. Section 4 sets out the current projected position for IJB reserves, with an expected balance by the year end of 6.4 million, with future year commitments at present of 4.2 million, including those for partnership funds. This leaves a remaining balance of 2.2 million, which equates to the required contingency balance recommended in the IJB's reserves policy. Section 5 details the main reasons for the reported overspend projected as follows. Within social care, there is a projected overspend of 8 million in relation to external care and support at home, including the non-achievement of agreed efficiencies for this financial year. It should be noted that this projection included an assumption of reduced future spend due to limits which were being placed on the approval of any new and increased care packages. This projection will rise when next reported, as these limits have had to be adjusted and increased to address both winter and delayed discharge pressures within Forth Valley Royal Hospital. We continue to take an agile approach to flexing these limits to ensure whole system pressures are addressed in the most appropriate way. It had also emerged that some sleepover provision costs, which were not included in the position at the time of drafting this report, which will also increase the projected spend when next reported. The overspend in the external service is offset by a significant projected underspend within the in-house care at home provision of £3.7 million due to the vacancies within the service pending the care at home redesign. In-house residential units staffing pressures are giving rise to a projected overspend of 1.5 million this financial year, and work has been ongoing to reduce agency spend in this area, and this is continuing to reduce as the year progresses. External residential placements for adults and older people are projected to overspend by 2.1 million at this stage. The implementation of the 2-for-1 admissions approach since September is reducing the number of placements, with a reduced spend of 425,000 expected this financial year within this position, which is actually included within that projection. At the time of drafting the report, there had been a reduction of 30 places. I can now report that this has risen to over 50, which will reduce the spend in this area by approximately 1.7 million in future years. Housing with care services are expected to overspend by £500,000 due to staffing requirements with being over the budgeted level. Again, work is ongoing to reduce the use of agency staff, with good progress being made. The Budget Working Group are bringing forward proposals in this area for the IJB's consideration. There are a large number of vacancies throughout services which are offsetting some of the overspend position, the most significant within assessment and care planning. Within health budgets, the main variances are in relation to primary care prescribing, with a projected overspend of 2.2 million, an improved position since the last report. This position is net of a one-off contribution this financial year from reserves of £3.5 million. The overspend within this area is again offset by underspends throughout services in relation to employee cost vacancies, mainly within community hospitals, which show an underspend of £435,000, and against development funds held from the closure of Falkirk Community Hospital, which have not been utilised this financial year. Section 6 details the position in relation to the agreed savings for the year, which are also set out in Appendix 5. The measures which have been implemented to facilitate achievement of the efficiencies are set out at 6.2 in the paper, including reviews of existing care packages, improved debt recovery processes, the introduction of resource allocation panels, and improved processes across a number of other areas. The reported position includes the effect of any recovery actions taken, and it is anticipated that there may be further achievements prior to the year end. These are set out at the table in 7.1, with further recovery expected against vacancy scrutiny, new care package approvals, including respite and daycare, and continued reduced spend on supplies and administrating costs. Risks to the position are set out at section 8 in the paper, including care and support at home demand, as already mentioned, outstanding job evaluations for care staff, and the volatility of prescribing costs. The strategic risk register continues to show the financial risk is very high in view of the challenging position set out. IJB members are being asked to note the projected position today and to authorise the Chief Officer to issue updated directions based on the position reported. I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marie. And I think many of the areas of overspend will be very familiar to us, and areas that we've approved, which are areas that I'm sure none of us would want to make savings in, but the reality is we have to deliver social care services to an increasing number of people with increasing complexity, and we must be able to do that effectively. And I thank Marie and her team for the work that they've been doing, and everybody involved in that work. I did want to touch on something more positive. One of the decisions we made in relation to Oswald Avenue and investment in Dundas, they had an open day for councillors, and I was able to go down and to Dundas, and how keen and excited they are about the plans to develop the service there and enhance the service, the Joint Dementia Initiative. So I think that was a really positive decision that we made, which was about transformation and is about making savings, but some of our savings are really about transforming the services that we deliver. So I particularly wanted to mention that. But I'm going to open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I was unable to attend the open day, but I had been at the Christmas coffee morning just before Christmas and was very impressed by all the work that was going on there at Dundas. And yes, I think it is important that we look at savings in terms of how we can improve our services as well. And on that, with that in mind, I wanted to ask a wee bit more about the 2-for-1 approach and the reduction of 50 places in residential care homes. Can you say a little more about what is being done to mitigate the impact that has? Because there is clearly the potential for that then to have an impact on delayed discharge. There's a potential for it to have an impact, particularly alongside the review of care packages. How are we mitigating the problems that might arise from that?
Thank you, Anne. Can I bring Caroline in on that point?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. In terms of managing that risk, as we recognise, if someone's been assessed as requiring 24-hour care, we have to manage that. What we've been doing by having the resource allocation panels, we've been looking at how we can provide enhanced community resources to support people to remain at home longer. So that's been more robust around actually looking at the assessment and care planning process. What's been interesting is in terms of the waiting list, the number hasn't increased. So we've not seen an increase in the number of people that are waiting for a care home placement, because we've been able to manage that risk and look at other ways that we can support individuals. And it's probably part of the reason why our care at home expenditure is increasing, because we're using the services in a different way. So it's been really helpful in terms of the resource allocation panels. They're multidisciplinary. So we've got a range of professionals that are around that can look at the different interventions that we can put in to support people to remain at home longer. And part of that is about care at home, but also alternatives to 24-hour care. So in terms of providing reassurance, I would say we review that list on a daily basis to look at who requires 24-hour care. When we're actually releasing the funding, it's a multi-agency, multidisciplinary discussion about who's most at risk and prioritising where that sits in terms of releasing that funding. And it's not all, you know, focused on hospital discharge. It's about that kind of whole system, because we recognise that there's a risk that people could end up being admitted into hospital if they're not, you know, provided 24-hour care.
So, ever the optimist, is there a potential here that we could actually be enabling more people to stay at home as a result of this change?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, you know, when we're looking at some of the tester changes that we're putting in as well, we're really keen to look at how we know that people want to remain at home for as long as possible. And we're keen to look at how we can transform our resources so that we can promote that and support people in a different way that allows that to continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Gordon.
Yeah, more comment than question, Chair. I really feel for finance directors and chief finance officers at the moment. It seems to be their lot in life to bring us bad news pretty much every meeting. And we've kind of been in a position, as most public sector organisations are, as we get closer to the end of the financial year, of thinking not whether we're going to be overspent, but actually can we minimise the overspend, which is never a good place to be in. However, it's good to see that we are looking at that transformative approach. I mean, we've talked before about how we've reached the position where we know demand is increasing, we know resources are decreasing, and that's a circle you just can't square. You know, we need to do something different, or else the whole system will fall apart. And what we're seeing with examples like we've just talked about is that quite often what's best for people is actually a cheaper option anyway. So it's really how we can speed up that transformation. The one thing I did want to note explicitly was the reserves position. You know, obviously we have depleted our reserves, and that has been the right thing to do in the short term, but you can only do that for so long, and we are reaching the point where reserves are at minimum level. So, you know, that becomes not an option for the future. As I say, it's the right thing to have done, and that's led us to where we are, but we just need to be careful and realise that there is kind of, we've run out of headspace to keep doing that.
I don't know if you want to make comment on the reserves position.
I suppose nothing other than to say, yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, the position is not ideal, but obviously the next paper, the budget paper, is going to talk about some of those transformation proposals that we're bringing forward as well. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Yep, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Marie, for a very detailed and comprehensive report. It covered a lot of interesting facts. Gordon's already raised the point that I was going to raise about reserves, so I'll leave that one to one side. Just a quick question on 6.2, debt recovery. Are you able to give a value of what the outstanding debts would be? And secondly, what improvement do you expect with the new debt recovery process with regards to that? It'd just be good to get a feel for that number. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Flynn, for your question. So I don't have the detailed figures with me today around that, but what I can tell you is that previous collections around social care charges sat at approximately 60%. So there was a non-recovery of 40% of social care charges. So previously we weren't in line with the council policy of escalating to sheriff officers where there was non-payment. So that has now been happening from this financial year. That has improved. I don't have the recent figures, but we had noted around a 10% improvement the last time I asked, which was approximately 3 months ago, I think. So I can get an updated position. Obviously that becomes pertinent around the social care charge and proposals in the next paper as well. Where we have included a deflated element around that retrieval of payments. So it is improving, but I can certainly get you an update on the basis of what the latest information is. But they are now all being escalated in the same way as council charges.
No, thank you very much. And just a quick question following on is that for people that haven't paid, the 40%, should they need some, obviously social care, how does that impact upon them? Do you still give them future social care, or are they, banned or blacklisted from it? Just out of curiosity.
Others might want to come in, but it's based on assessed need. If they are assessed as needing that care, they will receive that care.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Roger.
Just to pick up on Councillor Hannah's point about the 2-for-1 situation, Falkirk has for a long time had a higher rate of people in care homes than most other councils, but that is very cultural, deep embedded cultural aspect of the way things are done at all levels and the expectations of service users and carers. So that's quite a difficult thing to budge. The cultural issues there through health, social care, social workers, we've all got that embedded in us in Falkirk, I think. So it's not so easy, but I welcome that. It's very easy to see that knock-on effects if you're not careful there in some families and some circumstances, and you do see some of those coming up. But I think I generally support that process. It's just you've got to be wary of some of the knock-on effects that you might not have predicted there due to the cultural changes.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? No, in that case, we are noting the current projected position and authorising the Chief Officer to make the revised directions. Okay, thank you. And I'll take us back to Marie for item 7 on the IJB draft business case.
Thanks, Chair. This report provides an update on the IJB revenue budget process and medium-term financial plan across the next 3 financial years. Since last reported to the IJB, the Scottish Government have provided their budget settlement on the 4th of December. Despite the announcement at the time of drafting this report, Falkirk Council and NHS Forth Valley are still awaiting final confirmation of the implications of any additional funding and associated uplifts to the IJB. An overall 3% uplift has been noted for NHS. Previous assumptions were that a 2% uplift was likely on pay budgets only. This has now been changed to 3% for pay within the latest assumptions. Indicative non-pay uplifts of 3% are also now expected, but amounts are still to be confirmed and are not included in the position at this stage. An additional £140 million is expected in relation to Scottish living wage uplift for adult social care provision via Falkirk Council. This paper assumes that any uplifts will be fully funded at this stage. However, early indications are that this may cause an additional pressure, which is still to be quantified. The implications of the employer's national insurance rise is still not yet confirmed at this stage either. Falkirk Council are expected to set their budget on the 6th of March, which will confirm the funding allocation to the IJB, and NHS Forth Valley are expected to confirm funding by the end of February. Until final confirmations are received, an indicative funding level is being used to develop the IJB budget. Members will continue to be updated at development sessions, one later this afternoon and one in February prior to the meeting to set the budget on the 21st of March. As noted within the Budget Monitoring Report, the reserves position of the IJB will be significantly impacted due to the overspend position for 24-25, and this is shown at paragraph 3.5 in the paper, showing that the requirement for recurring solutions to the budget gap are required and imperative going forward. The updated budget gap position set out at 4.1, with a gap of for 25-26 of 13.9 million identified, rising to 21.1 million over the medium term. The table also shows a number of savings already agreed or identified of 1.1 million, reducing the overall gap to just over 20 million. The main assumptions within the position are set out at 4.2 in the paper. The Budget Working Group have developed a number of efficiency and transformation proposals, which have been shared with board members at our development sessions, and a number of these proposals affecting stakeholders are now the subject of our public consultation, which went live on the 17th of February. This consultation will remain open for 6 weeks and will inform the final impact assessments, which will be issued prior to the budget setting meeting in March. Ongoing findings will be shared at our development session later this afternoon and in February as they emerge. Section 6 of the paper gives details of our proposed changes to social care charges. As charging is not a delegated function for IJB decision, the IJB are being asked to endorse the proposals set out, which would then form part of the Council's budget paper for approval on 6th of March, along with the charging proposals from other directorates. The changes proposed are shown in Appendix 1 and are as follows. An increase to the cap charges for both adults and older adults of £15.85 per week, bringing them to £50 and £33.60 respectively. A change for older adults non-personal care charging from a weekly rate to an hourly rate of £13.55 in line with under 65 charges going forward, still subject to the revised cap. Uplifts of approximately 5% rounded to the nearest 5p for all other non-residential care charges, and increases to housing with care meal charges are also proposed. These are higher than the inflationary uplifts but have not been uplifted for some time. Finally, in relation to charging, removal of means testing for MEX alarms charges is also proposed, meaning that all users of alarms, with the exception of housing with care properties, where an alarm comes as standard with the property, will move to a flat rate charge of £5 per week. Financial assessments can be carried out on request to assess affordability, and income maximisation referrals can be made where appropriate to mitigate the impact of any proposed changes. Section 7 and Appendix 2 sets out the updated position in relation to partnership funds and shows the 25-26 indicative funding for third and voluntary sector projects and services at a level of 3.334 million, including the mental health recovery and renewal specific funds, being an overall funding package of 90% of the 24-25 funding levels. As previously agreed by the IJB, a current review exercise is underway with our partners, submitting funding requests for 25-26 financial year with an evaluation process to take place starting next week. To support the planning and evaluation process which is underway, members of the board are being asked to approve this indicative funding package for 25-26 as set out. We have continued to communicate with current recipients of funds, and CVS are also supporting organisations throughout the process. Following the evaluation and allocation of funds, the updated final programme for 25-26 will come to the IJB along with the budget for approval on the 21st of March. This updated programme will replace the Partnership Funding Investment Plan agreed by the IJB in March. The thematic review of early intervention and prevention spend previously notified to the board will take place during next financial year to ensure that an appropriate exit plan is developed to further reduce reliance on non-recurring reserves in this area, as this is an unsustainable funding source going forward. Section 8 notes the challenging positions also faced by Falkirk Council and NHS Forth Valley, and Section 9 notes the risks to the current assumptions. There continue to be adjustments and emerging issues and risks in relation to the overall position. There are a number of risks in relation to the budget and medium-term financial plan as set out, and I will continue to keep the IJB updated at planned budget development sessions prior to the budget setting meeting on the 21st of March. And communication continues with all key stakeholders as the consultation process continues, with a number of groups and planned team sessions in the diary. In summary, the IJB are asked to note the update, endorse the social care charging proposal set out in Appendix 1, approve the indicative funding package for 25-26 for partnership funds as set out in Appendix 2, and to note that an updated partnership funds investment plan will be brought forward following the thematic reviews to be carried out during 25-26. Thanks very much, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions on the paper.
Thank you, Marie, and I think the paper sets out the considerable challenge that we have and the actions that we need to take, not just for the coming year, but for future years. I want to just quickly thank those, Marie, and those who've been involved in the budget working group. I know that this is a considerable amount of work to bring forward proposals and the work to consult with communities and groups across the district, and obviously Maria said you'll hear more about the session this afternoon. I've got one question and then I'm going to open up. It is in relation to social care charging and around income maximisation, a part of the financial assessment. I just wonder if we can advise the board about who will be carrying out that work, and how do we ensure that people apply for all the social security benefits, for example, that they're eligible for, including other support within the council, like council tax reduction, and how do we make sure that we really have excellent take-up in relation to that, particularly for those people who don't have access to digital resources?
Thanks, Chair. So if the charges are approved, then we would be notifying all recipients of social care charges, and also referring them that if they're able to access income maximisation if they wish. There is a resource within the corporate finance team with Falkirk Council, and those referrals would go via that area. There is only one person in post in that area at this point in time, so we would need to monitor the demand on that carefully, but they would be offered that income maximisation when those letters go out, and also they would be able to access a financial assessment for affordability if required as well.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments. Gordon?
Just to express concern for service users of the implications of all of this and of the delay in National Care Service legislation, and very worried about how we're going to deal with these issues. More of a comment, I think, than a question.
Thank you, and I think I think part of the process is ensuring that we really support people who use services as part of any changes, but also in relation to the National Care Service. I think there's been varying views, I think, and there's certainly been some disappointment expressed by a number of groups representing people who use services. So I think my personal view, for what it's worth, that there's a great deal of work that needs to be done in relation to supporting, improving and funding social care at a national level, and making sure that individuals who with lived experience are really involved in the National Advisory Board, which I think that's the new term it's going to be, rather than what was proposed, but actually that's at the heart of what's developed. So I recognise your comments and thank you for them. And can I bring Gordon in now?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean it is a good point to remember that, you know, we're looking at budget papers and numbers on a piece of paper, but you know there are people behind that. I think I would echo your comments around National Care Service. You know, going back to the publishing of the Feely report and the optimism I think we all felt in terms of the direction of travel. It feels like we've spent an awful lot of time talking about structures and boards and things rather than actually improving social care, and also spent an awful lot of money, none of which has improved social care at all, in my view. That's for another day, perhaps. In relation to the paper, Marie, I think it's a really good paper. It's really detailed. It's realistic, I think. I know it's based on an awful lot of projections, an awful lot of moving parts. So, you know, we do need to recognise the degree of uncertainty in so many of these assumptions. I mean, assumptions are always kind of best guess based on the information you have. I guess the two things I wanted to say is that there may be some good news in relation to the First Minister's speech on Monday, where he talked about additional investment in primary care and in pharmacy, which may feed down to some extra money. I'm saying may because, you know, again, the details are yet to be announced, but there may be something there. The question I wanted to ask was around prescribing budgets, something that has exercised us quite a bit over the past year and beyond. The assumption, if I'm right, is 5% increase next year, although it says at section 9.8 that the recommended uplift is 10%. The difference between those two figures, if I'm doing my math correctly, would be about 1.6 million. So that's quite a substantial sum. I just want to get straight in my own head kind of why we're saying we think the increase will be so much less than the recommended increase, so that, you know, we can just be assured that that is a realistic position. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So actually the latest assumption is 7.5%. So what we've done is recognised that we need to make recurring that non-recurring commitment this year of 3.5 million. So that was the first part that we've done, is put in that 3.5 million on a recurring basis. Then we've added 7.5 million. 7.5 million, I wish, 7.5% on top of that. So at the moment, the recommendation is 10%. We've included 7.5, and that's in line with what Clacks and Stirling are doing as well. So that 10% recommendation is a Scottish average. So the data that we've got at the moment suggests that ours might not be 10%. So we're going with 7.5 at the moment. We're working through savings proposals around prescribing at the moment as well. And obviously we've had that deep dive around prescribing issues as well. And you know, Tom and others are really key to that process, and we're driving forward that process around reductions as well. It's a very difficult one. You know, based on the trajectory at the moment, it's difficult to understand what you would need to put in for next year, and the affordability then comes in as well. If we don't drive forward those efficiencies, then those costs will just continue to go up. I would say at the moment what we've done is assume that we're able to deal with the pressures as they are at this point in time, but we would need to keep that under review, close review, as the year progresses next year. So I don't know if that answers your question. I know I'm talking about moving parts. I say that a lot, but it has gone up to 7.5% at the moment.
Tom, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just when you through yourself, Chair, just when you hadn't heard enough horror stories. The Medicines Optimisation Board the other day there, which Marie and I attended, spent a lot of time talking about the imminent arrival of the new drugs relating to obesity. And the demand likely to come as a consequence of that. And I wanted to say two things about that. One is that becomes yet another very, very big challenge. Current estimates are in the region of, please don't take this in, many millions for Forth Valley per year additional challenge. Again, it all depends on the phasing of that. It all depends on the uptake of that and the demand for that. But as you can imagine, demand will probably be very, very high. But probably the more important point I wanted to make, and we did have some discussion about it, is I suppose the broader responsibility of those of us within health and social care in relation to supporting people understand what the implications of that is. So this is not intended to be a drug that just immediately resets your lifestyle and takes you back to a smaller size so that you can then continue to engage in whatever you're doing. I appreciate there's a big cohort of people for whom that's a major challenge, and there are underlying conditions that contribute to that and a whole range of things, but also there are a lot of people for whom a lot of their problems are lifestyle choices, and I know there are some things we can't do much about in terms of affordability of healthy choices for food for people, for example, and I know we can't do an awful lot about the availability of opportunities for people with poorer incomes for exercise and leisure and the kind of things that would support good lifestyles. But there are other things in terms of trying to work in terms of public health and health improvement around about trying to support people to see this for what it is. And whilst that won't be entirely our responsibility, we will have to contribute to that. So first and foremost, this becomes an institutional challenge financially and also clinically. But secondly, it becomes a big civic challenge as well in terms of how we support our communities to kind of work through this. Because this is one of those rare occasions when it's a big volume, a drug for a big, very, very big volume of people, many of whom are not of itself ill in the sense of requiring a drug. It's often a consequence of a myriad of things, and this is meant to be some kind of resolve. So I wanted to take this platform, excuse the indulgence there, Chair, but I wanted to put that into people's consciousness.
Thank you. So some interesting news and certainly some considerable implications, I think, for I think for the council as well in terms of leisure provision and things like that. So I think that the partnership will be a really important player in supporting those other elements for individuals. I'm going to go to Councillor Hannah and then Caroline. I've got you listed.
Thank you, convener. Just sort of on that, there's been recent research showing that actually the cost of healthy food is increasing considerably more than the cost of unhealthy food. And that is obviously a matter that needs to be addressed. And in that context, looking at the income maximisation side of things becomes really, really important, so that we make sure that we are engaging with people to maximise the income that they have coming in from their rightful sources. Now, you said when you were speaking about the income maximisation that people can be offered income maximisation. I would prefer if our approach to this was mandatory, that people are offered income maximisation services. And I think we should make it something that is the default. It's not something that is just, we may decide to do it. I think it's really important that everybody gets that opportunity if they want it. We can't force it on them, obviously, but if people want that service, I think it's really, really important that it is there. And I would just ask that would be a change in our way of talking about it. I think would be useful. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to be monitoring, because it does sound to me as if there may be inadequate resources in terms of staffing to deliver what we would want to deliver in terms of income maximisation. So we may need to revisit that. In terms of the charges, Margot's point about how it's going to impact on individuals is really, really important. And obviously nobody wants to be increasing charges, but in terms of meeting the budget requirements, it may be necessary. But I wonder if you could say a little more about any benchmarking that has been done in relation to our charges and how this area compares with other areas in terms of the charges that we impose. Because I'm from a previous conversation, I think our charges may be lagging behind others, and I would just like a little more information about that.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. Can I just pick up on something and said I wanted to just double check the proposal when people receive letters is they will be offered the opportunity for income maximisation. I just wanted to double check that that's my understanding. I'd been right there.
Yeah, those letters are still to be drafted, but that offer will be in the letter to let people know, if it's approved, that the charges would be going up. They are able to access income maximisation if they want it, and obviously they would be able to also access a financial assessment as well around affordability. So around, and you're right, Councillor Hannah, about that resource. We would really need to monitor that carefully about whether there was enough resource to deal with any demand that came out. But we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep a close eye on that as it emerges. So around benchmarking, so yeah, Falkirk's charges have been fairly low for a long time in comparison with the rest of Scotland. So that cap charge previously, so I'm just going to get that to my appendix, so I've got the figures in front of me. So the cap charges for users over 65 was £17.75 a week. So that means regardless of the number of hours or the number of days of daycare or a MEX alarms charge that you had, the maximum you would pay would be £17.75 a week. And for under 65s, the maximum was £34.15. So again, if somebody had 2 hours a week plus a day's daycare, they would be paying exactly the same as somebody who has 20 hours of non-personal care plus 5 days daycare plus a MEX alarm. So that cap charge has been really low for some time. Some of the benchmarking, so I did a CFO network query and they've come back to confirm. So of those that responded, so there's, for example, some of those came back. Ours was actually the lowest of all of the respondents that had. Ours was the lowest. So some of the examples here. So for example, Renfrewshire don't have a maximum charge applied. They're saying the cost of the service is the maximum charge. Others don't have a maximum weekly charge applied at all. Weston Barton was £78.40 a week. So we're proposing to move the cap at the highest level to £50 per week. East Ayrshire are £107 a week. North Ayrshire £96, Aberdeen City £105, and Dumfries and Galloway was £121 a week. So we are still going to be at the lowest of those respondents that came back. We are still going to be at the lowest cap charge per week going forward with these proposals. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Convener.
Okay. Caroline.
I just wanted to, in terms of the 0.5 on savings, thank you for letting me speak, on savings and transformation proposals, the carers have asked me just to say thank you so much to Caroline and to Marie for coming to the Carer Voices on Monday. They were really grateful to have that chance to input and be involved. So thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, Stephen, my brain just went off there for a moment.
It's all right, Fiona. I'm instantly forgettable, but thank you. I do think there's a wider debate to be had nationally about charging because, you know, there's a postcode lottery, isn't there, in relation to charging. And I know it's all relevant to deprivation and all the rest of it. In some areas, the population will be able to afford perhaps the charges more than others, but I think that's a wider debate that we need to be pushing nationally. My question relates to the perennial issue of delayed discharges and underfunded beds, and it's one one sentence in 910. It talks about the standard operating procedure, but it says in place to progress with planned reductions where possible. I'm just worried. Why, where possible, if we have a SOP that is designed to assist us with delayed discharges and underfunded beds, should we not make sure that is done in every occasion? Thank you.
Yes, so the standard operating procedure that's referred to is one that was put in place over the summer, and it was really successful in terms of supporting people to come out of the unfunded beds, so the 5 beds and 4-bedded bays. I think over the winter pressures, over the winter period, there has been a need to go back into those beds. So the standard operating procedure is still in operation. It's about to be sort of reinvigorated. Obviously, there's as a result of the storm period last weekend, we've seen the pressures in the hospital go up significantly over the last 7 days. So that's created a different challenge. But work is ongoing on a whole system basis to make sure that we are. I suppose it's about getting people to the right place at the right time for the care that they need at that point in time. And I think, as Gordon mentioned earlier, that's probably the most efficient method as well. But in periods of surge, we do need to use the available beds, and that's what we've seen happen. So I suppose it's the May bit references the fact that there are other influences other than a steady system. We have peaks and troughs which impact on what we have in place and the models that we have in place.
Are there any other questions or comments? I might take Chair's privilege to ask another question, Marie. It was just actually something Stephen mentioned around around social care charging itself, and there has been discussion about the removal of non-residential social care charging, and I don't know if it was linked to the National Care Service or timelined with the National Care Service. And I wondered if there'd been any further discussion nationally about the progress in relation to that.
So other than what was in that announcement, know at the moment. At the CFO network, we get regular updates around these things, and there hasn't been any indication that it's imminent other than that announcement. So you know what I know at this point in time. Sorry.
Thank you. Right. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, then I'll stop asking questions. I would like to bring you back to the recommendations. So 2.1 is noting the most recent position. 2.2 is endorsing the updated social care charging proposals, which will be presented to Falkirk Council, who are the decision maker in that. Are we happy to do that?
Agreed.
Thank you. And 2.3 is about noting the partnership investment plan, and there's two sections to this. A is approving the indicative funding package for 25-26. Are we happy to do that?
Agreed.
Thank you. And noting the updated investment plan. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm going to move us on to item 8, which is the proposed integration of children and justice social work services into the Falkirk Health and Social Care Partnership, and I'm going to pass to Gail.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm pleased to introduce this report. So this report represents a culmination of a huge amount of work by a number of colleagues over the last 18 months or so, and it identifies the work that has been ongoing, overseen by a programme board with 4 work streams. So a similar report went to NHS Forth Valley this week and to Falkirk Council this week as well. So the work of the programme board has identified and recommended that the Children's Social Work and Justice Social Work Services, which currently sits under Sarah Lacey in the Council, move into the partnership. And there's 2 aspects of this. One is in terms of that operational management being part of the partnership, which will allow further work around integration and joined up services to ultimately benefit those who receive the services, recognising that children are part of a whole family system. And the other aspect is around the delegation of the Children's Social Work and Justice Social Work Services to the Integration Joint Board. So we heard earlier that the integration scheme, revised integration scheme, has now been approved by NHS Forth Valley and Falkirk Council. So that will now be submitted to Scottish ministers for their consent. Assuming that is granted, that will then become the new integration scheme under which the IJB operates. The other aspect is around the integration of children's social work and justice services. So again, NHS Forth Valley endorsed that move. It is obviously a council decision because the services are operational under the council, and Falkirk Council yesterday approved that the operational management of those services would move to the partnership. So the Integration Joint Board today is being asked to note the report and the decisions taken by NHS Forth Valley Board at its meeting on the 28th of January and Falkirk Council on its meeting of the 30th of January, and to endorse the proposed transfer of the operational management of children's and justice social work to the partnership and the proposed delegation of the statutory function relating to these services to the Integration Joint Board. So happy to take any questions, and we've also obviously got Martin and Sarah here who have been leading much of the work around this. I think it's important to state that the work in relation to this is not concluded on these decisions, but there's a lot of work still remaining to be undertaken. So the programme board will continue. The work streams might change in terms of reflecting what the current priorities are. The work around the benefits of the transfer as set out in the report, it's really important that we monitor that and we're clear about how we know that we've been successful, how we know that we've been delivered, and actually if it's looking like those have not been delivered, what else we can put in place to help improve outcomes of children, young people and those going through the justice system. So that work will continue. A key aspect of that is obviously going to be around engagement, particularly with our staff members who are affected by the changes, to make sure they feel as welcomed as possible into the partnership, and that is as smooth as possible, again to support the vital work they do in terms of supporting children and young people.
Thank you, and I think very much this is a start of a journey not the end point. Just quickly to say thank you to everyone who's been involved in the programme board, and particularly to Martin and Sarah, and who've engaged with the community consultation. This and the integration scheme have both been huge pieces of work, and very much appreciate everybody who's engaged with this. I'm going to open it up to questions or comments, and I know I've got Roger.
Thanks, Chair. The three main unions, Unison, Unite and GMB, are opposed to this restructure. What I'd say is that the objective research that was undertaken, high quality research that was undertaken into restructures of this sort, concluded that there was no benefit overall to such a restructure. That's not subjective feelings from individuals, that is objective and high quality research, one of the best researchers in Scotland. But I think what saddens many of the people that I speak to on the front line is that while we're all considering how we need to tighten our belts with one of the most serious cuts in our funding, and struggling to see how we can fill this black hole in the funding, and frontline workers are very, very aware of needs for cutbacks and are struggling with this. They see, and Gary, you've just highlighted just the huge amount of work that's been put into this. That's time and energy. Time is money. And they say, well, that money and energy could be focused instead on the gaps which have appeared in the services to frontline workers. Instead, this time and energy has been put into considering a restructuring which the professional high quality research says is not going to be of benefit to the service users, overall benefit to the service users. So we're very disappointed. And the end product of this is workers coming back to me and saying, we're not listened to, we're disempowered, our views are not taken into account, and we just feel we're done to rather than being an empowered group of employees. Thanks.
Thank you, Gail.
Yes, I'll maybe start, and then maybe Martin's been leading the engagement workstream. Maybe ask Martin to say a few words about that as well. So, first of all, just to confirm that there's been no additional budget particularly related to this. So it's not moved money from another place. I do get your point in terms of the time that's taken for officers. What I would say is actually the time has been used in terms of thinking about how can we support and improve the support that's given to children, young people, families, and our whole society. So that is a good conversation to have, and that is a good use of resources to think about actually what are the opportunities around how we integrate, how services work closer together, and that's what this will bring. So that's been at the forefront of the conversations. It's been at the forefront of the focus of the programme board around that improving outcomes for people in our communities. In terms of the report that you mentioned, I think you're referring to the Celsus report. So my understanding is that while it identified that structural change doesn't necessarily benefit or disbenefit, so it's quite a neutral report in terms of its findings, it's about how services work together. And I think that's been the focus of the programme board in terms of what is the opportunity in terms of creating the conditions for services and people on the front line to be better connected and to work better together to ultimately benefit service users and people in our communities. So again, that's why the work starts today. It continues because that's our ultimate aim, is to improve and work collaboratively together to improve outcomes for people in our communities. But maybe pass over to Martin, who'll be able to talk more about the engagement, the levels of participation in relation to the staff and some of the feedback we've heard through that process.
Thanks, Gail. As outlined in the report, actually what we received in terms of feedback from the staff and those that engaged in the consultation in the main was extremely positive. I guess I'm quite surprised to hear that staff members have been approaching the unions saying that they're unhappy and they feel they haven't been heard. We did have significant staff engagement events. I think we had 8 in total that were open to all members of Children and Justice Services and Health and Social Care Partnership staff, and the feedback from those sessions was unanimously positive. We did get some negative comments as set out in the report, but they were about the challenges, I guess, as Roger's highlighted, around a view that actually restructure takes a lot of work and staff are under pressure. I'll maybe ask Sarah to comment a bit more on the Celsus report, which was the one that actually I think Roger's referring to. In terms of the engagement that we had with public, the online consultation, although there was very little feedback to that, it was in the main positive. There was a view that actually one referral route into social care was better than the current model where we have 2. There was a view that transition from children's services to adult services would be much smoother in an integrated service, and that actually integrated budgets from children and adult service social work would actually lead to much smoother service transition across the board. There was also a view expressed by staff that actually that whole family approach from one service was a positive, and that it was something that staff would strive to achieve. What I saw throughout the consultation engagement sessions, I have to say, was real passion for working together to achieve a whole family approach to make sure that we got it right for everyone. There was real commitment from children's services to work closer with adult services and to develop services that actually delivered that whole family approach. So I guess it's disappointing to hear that the unions weren't happy with us and didn't support it. But the majority of staff, that in fact all the staff that engaged throughout the process, gave really positive comments and actually all expressed that they thought it was absolutely the right thing to do. There was a bit of concern expressed around the loss of the links with education services, but actually when we explored that and discussed it in more detail, there was a real view that actually adults could benefit from building on the relationships that children's services have with education. So if we were able to maintain those links, not only would that continue the good relationship that children's services have, but actually adult services could benefit from that as well, particularly in terms of transition. The view was that adult services and children's services together could work with education to ensure that children are prepared for adulthood, rather than ending one care episode and beginning another. So I am surprised to hear that's the view that's been expressed to unions. It's definitely not the view that was expressed throughout the consultation in any of the events that we facilitated. And as I said, we had 8 direct engagement sessions with staff. We engaged with children through the Champions Board. We engaged with a significant number of stakeholders, and every one of them highlighted potential benefits that they saw, and the report highlights the challenges that we face in terms of integration. However, we believe that given the commitment of staff that we saw throughout the consultation period and the commitment from the leadership team, actually we would be able to resolve those challenges. I'll maybe hand over to Sarah now to explain the findings of the Celsus report. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. So Celsus, just in case people are wondering, stands for Centre for Excellence for Children's Care and Protection. So they have they were requested and commissioned by Scottish Government as a consequence of consultation feedback in some of the kind of earlier stages of the National Care Service to undertake a very considered evaluation of what it is that children, young people and their families need. It was specifically focused on children's social work, and there was a separate evaluation undertaken also of justice. We actually utilised the concluding report as a basis of the work of the programme board. And when Martin and I were delivering the first iteration of consultation rounds with our workforce, we based much of the conversation on the Celsus report. It was an interesting report. It was a concluding piece of 4 different strands. So Celsus had considered European research and more local research. There was a considerable, sizable survey that was undertaken of the workforce. It was a full partnership workforce, and we very much encouraged our partnership workforce to participate in that survey so that our voices could be heard. We got some localised data from that too, which was particularly helpful. And again, we used that in our considerations alongside consultation feedback. Gail referenced the report to be quite neutral in its conclusion, and that's my view of it. It came to a particular, and Roger and I have had a conversation about our different views of where the report concluded, but it really did point out the importance of leadership, of joint priorities, of wherever you have your services sitting in whatever particular integrated space. These are the key aspects which we've outlined in the report, which, as Gail has outlined, the programme board will continue, will be making sure they'll be monitoring the benefits going forward. But just really to say that the report was a national report. We've used it to our best effect, and we will continue to make sure that we're monitoring the success of those anticipated benefits going forward. But like Martin, I've been front and centre a lot of the conversations with the workforce, and we've seen really good engagement and some real motivated and excitement around this proposal, alongside people being encouraged to make the challenges clear. And we've been really willing to listen to those challenges, and we've thought about those challenges. And in the second round of consultation, which was led by our senior team, we came back and we referenced some of those challenges and talked about how together we could work around them. As Gail said earlier, or Fiona said, this is the start of the journey, and that continued dialogue with our workforce, our stakeholders and our service users is absolutely going to continue.
Thanks. I think you probably just said at the end what I was going to come in to say. So just to assure IJB members and Roger, we've listened to your comments, and I think the supporting the workforce through the change is really paramount and really important to us. So, and it might well be that there are, obviously the feedback that Martin's outlined has indicated that the staff that we spoke to and fed back were very supportive. But if there are staff that are worried about this, we're really keen to support them to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible. And actually, for the vast majority of staff, they will notice initially very little difference. From a senior perspective, there'll be some changes of line management and things like that. But people who work delivering frontline care every day, they will continue to deliver that same frontline care every day. Obviously the aspirations around creating the conditions for greater joined up working will progress. But if there are people that are concerned, we're really keen to support that, to make sure that the process is as smooth as possible, because obviously we really value the workforce that go above and beyond every single day.
Yeah, you're saying this is the start of the process, but there's no turning back. Once this decision is made today, that's it. And again, coming back to the objectivity of the CELSIS report, as opposed to by professionals, as opposed to managers who come in with a predetermined view, and inevitably are not professional researchers. So they're not. Their view is subjective. And it is easy to present to many people when you've got a predetermined view that this is the way forward. Your own views project those own views. So that's why we have professionals to undertake this research. As I say, we've got to come back always to the evidence here, and the evidence is this will not. Overall, there'll be gains and losses throughout the service, but overall, the evidence is saying quite clearly in the CELSIS report, it will be neutral. There will be winners and losers in the restructuring, but a lot of time and effort, which that money could have been directed towards frontline services, I believe has been lost. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. I'm going to draw a line under that just now, and I thank you for your comments and for the feedback from officers in relation to those challenges. And I'm going to bring in Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Some of the things I was going to raise related to what has just been discussed, so a number of my questions have been answered. I think we need to start, though, from the position that everybody involved in this has convinced me that the driver here is the improvement of services. And very often, sitting around this meeting, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at money. We're looking at how cuts can be made. So it's actually, from my point of view, quite positive that we are looking at reports where the driver for this proposal, for this change, is an improvement in the services that we're providing. Clearly, there are very strong different views about whether this will or will not deliver that. So I think it is important, as Gail was saying earlier on, that there's very detailed monitoring of the impact as we go forward. It is a huge exercise and it is painful. Change is always painful. But I think the important question is it going to improve the services for children, justice, and all the social care users? And I'm hoping that it will. I have been convinced that everyone involved wants it to improve services and will work hard to do that. But I think it's important going forward that, and maybe you could say a wee bit more about that, or perhaps Martin or Sarah could say a wee bit more about going forward, how that continued consultation is going to go on, and to ensure that those who are concerned about the direction of travel have their voices heard.
Yeah, so just to say, so the programme board, which oversees all of that work and determines the work plan, meets next week. So that is obviously the first chance the programme board will have to meet following the decisions that have been taken this week. And on the agenda is around the future work streams and the programmes. And certainly my expectation is there will be a continued work stream around participation and engagement, working with colleagues to work out the best ways to make sure that we're doing that to meet people's requirements. So again, we'd welcome, again, for Roger, if there's other things that you think we should be doing around that participation engagement, really welcome your views and anyone else's views in relation to that. So the programme board meets next week and it will determine the work streams and the plan thereafter, and we're happy to bring updates on that work to future IJBs.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that would be really helpful. Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. So I attended the development session to talk about this proposal because carers have been saying the way that it's working now isn't right for them and for the people they're caring for. So just to reiterate again what I said at the development session is that carers really welcome this. They've been talking about it for a long time in the time that I've been doing this. And I know that I'm not here to talk about my own personal circumstances, but I feel like our family are a good example of that service not working unless it's together. And I feel like if children and adult services were together at the time when we needed the support, then we would have been getting better support than we're getting now. So whilst I appreciate it's not my own personal view I should be given, I felt like that was a good example to give. So carers definitely welcome this happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there, Stephen, you were.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think my experience of change management is the only people that really enjoy change are those instigating it, and maybe then not so much. But and I think, you know, you'll having listened to the debate, you know, you'll always get early adopters on this, and you'll get folk who actually don't like that process. There's the bulk of people in the middle who just want to be led through it, and I think the key to that is leadership and ongoing engagement. So I'd like to find out as we go through what that that looks like. And I do think we have to see this against the backdrop of the wider work that we do. I've been involved in environments before where you've had to, even in a particular service, to say that actually, do you know what, we're not delivering, what we really want to or what we've done before in that particular area, but across the spectrum of what we're doing, we're providing the best possible service that we can within the financial envelope and the operational envelope that we've got. And sometimes it just has to be good enough in the environment that we're in just now. We want to improve continually, but let's not be naive. Operationally and financially, we're at a place we've never been before. But the key to this is leadership and communication. So, I'd like to find out a little bit more about that as we go through and keep a well eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no other comments or questions, I think probably to just say, I think every single person around this room and every single person that works in our services, I think fundamental is that they want to improve people's lives, and where we might have difference of opinion of the ways in which to do that, that's the thing that we have at the heart, and I think the thing that we will work towards. And I think that the monitoring and evaluation of outcomes for people is the most important part of it. We have a recommendation which is around endorsing this proposal. The decision is for the partners, so that is for NHS Forth Valley and for Falkirk Council, and those decisions were made at the meeting this week. Our decision is around endorsing the transfer of operational management of children and justice social work, and the delegation of the proposed delegation of the statutory function. And I'm just going to ask for a written agreement.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I'm just checking the time just now. I'm going to suggest that before our next report that we take a 10-minute break just for everybody to get a coffee and stretch their legs a little bit, and we'll come back at 11:10. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, everybody. We're just going to get started again with our meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm going to go straight over to Caroline, who's going to be taking us through the locality planning report.
Thank you, Chair. And I've also got colleagues, James and Grace, that have joined for this meeting. So Grace is the team manager for Central Locality, and James is the policy officer that supported the development of the plan. And they'll cover certain parts of it and are here to answer any questions alongside me. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce the report on locality planning, and it's agenda item 9 and the plan for Central Locality. First, I'm going to give an overview, and then James and Grace, who have joined us in teams, will cover other points in terms of the Central Locality Plan and summarise the consultation process. Falkirk Health and Social Care Partnership have established 3 localities as part of its commitment to delivering services tailored to the needs of the communities. The development of the locality plans was included in the action plan for year 1 of the HSEP strategic plan for 23-26, which was agreed in March 23. Locality plans should demonstrate how the outcomes and priorities of the HSCP strategic plan will be delivered in each locality by addressing the needs and challenges of that specific community. In September 2024, the IJB endorsed the approach of the development of locality plans, which included a phased approach with the central locality plan to be developed by December 2024. East and West locality plans will be developed in 2025, and we plan to follow the same process, but with minor adaptations based on the lessons learned. The locality plan for Central was developed by the Central Locality Delivery Group, with oversight provided by a locality planning steering group. Both groups are multi-agency and collaborated on the development of the process and plan. The plan is based on available data for the central locality, evidence of local needs and challenges, and feedback gathered through the consultation process. The plan also recognises the good work being undertaken currently in localities and aims to build on this and support its further development. And now I'm going to pass over to Grace, who's just going to provide a brief overview of the actual plan for central locality. Is that okay, Chair?
Morning, everyone. The development of the Central Locality Plan began in August 2024 with an initial meeting of the Central Delivery Group. At present, it's a short-life working group that's supported with the development of the Locality Plan. The membership of the group includes operational staff working across the locality, including social work, health and third sector and carer representation. The delivery group has since met monthly to drive development of the plan. The delivery group identified challenges relating to health and social care within the locality and priority areas to be addressed that align to the strategic plan. These were identified by utilising available data, including previous engagement work undertaken by the partnership. Finalising the main challenges and priority areas were supported through a phase of engagement. The priority areas identified were making it easier to manage your health and wellbeing, improved access and availability of community-based resources, reducing mental health harms and supporting recovery, and improved partnership working. The delivery group agreed 4 guiding principles which would underpin the work ongoing within the central locality as focus on person-centred care, addressing health and social care inequalities, eliminate discrimination, advance equality of opportunity and foster good relations, improving trauma-informed approaches. A delivery plan is appended to the Central Locality Plan, providing a list of actions to be implemented under each respective priority area. It includes measures which support implementation of the actions, as well as where actions align to related work streams. The delivery plan has been developed based on the current budget and awareness of the current pressures within the partnership, and has been shared with senior leadership team, the strategic planning group and the locality steering group. I'll now pass you over to James, who can tell you a little bit more about consultation and EPIA.
Thank you very much, Grace, and good morning, everybody. So a 6-week consultation and engagement phase was undertaken to develop the Central Locality Plan. The aim of the consultation was to define the challenges and priority areas identified by the Locality Delivery Group and ensure the correct areas were being addressed. The engagement also supported the development of actions that are included within the delivery plan. A range of face-to-face and online platforms were used to gather views. Overall, 38 individuals completed the online survey and over 100 individuals were engaged with at 13 in-person events across the locality area. In-person events focused on specific target groups such as older people, local community groups, carers and substance use services. Consultation fatigue had been highlighted as a concern to officers when conducting previous engagement exercises within the partnership. Therefore, the locality delivery group utilised the available data from previous engagement, which was used to inform the development of the plan. A consultation report is available on the Falkirk Council's Participate Plus website, which outlines further the feedback received, who we engaged with, and where respondents have been instrumental in the decision-making for the development of the central locality plan. An APIE was conducted where overall impacts to the protected characteristics were positive and neutral. The only negative impacts were for those protected characteristics that may require more focused areas of support. The mitigating action for this was to ensure our locality plan aligns with the related work streams and strategy development, which is targeted towards those protected characteristics. Thank you, and I would just like to pass back to Caroline.
So in summary, what we're asking is consideration of the draft central locality plan and it being approved along with the delivery plan. We're wanting people to note the consultation report and also note that the process that we would plan to use will be used for both east and west localities so we can progress that line of work. And also just to add in terms of supporting that work, we've also included in the pack directions for consideration to support the workforce to deliver the plan. And we're happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to everyone who's been involved, and I'm very excited that we have our first locality plan in front of us. So thank you everyone who's been involved and everybody who's been involved in the consultation. I think it's sensible to start with one and then build on that for the other locality plans. I try not to be parochial and go, as a councillor for the West, we should have started with the West. But I'm really excited to see this as it progresses, and I'm going to open up for questions. And I have Michelle.
Thank you, Fiona. It's good to see the plan, but I wonder, should we be concerned by the fact that there are no timescales set to achieving the actions outlined in the delivery plan in terms of good governance?
Can I?
Thank you, Chair. So the delivery group and the steering group had a debate around whether we should put, because we would want to have a smart plan, but also we recognise that we're out of kilter with the cycle for the HSE strategic plan, and probably some of the, so we're happy to take feedback around that, and if it's felt that that would be helpful to have like key points, key action points and dates to work towards, we're happy to do that. But it was felt that actually we wouldn't be able to accomplish probably before the next cycle of the HSEP plan is planned. And what we would want to do is take some of that information and put that into the strategic plan. And that will then allow us to kind of have a cycle that matches with the HSEP overall strategic plan, because we recognise that priorities might actually might change. And we probably, some of the actions will take longer than 3 years.
I wonder if it's as someone who I wonder if there would still be value in that and actually stating that, because I think that we need to be held to account, and if there are no timescales or deadlines, then I think it's really difficult for us to be held to account, or for us to hold you to account for the plan.
I'm just going to bring Gail in here.
Yeah, just to say we can include that within the plan, that reference. I think it's really important to articulate here that this is the first plan, so we know that it's a work in progress, and that's purposefully the case. So in terms of as we've gone, we've learned. So there'll be learning that'll be implemented for the West and the East, and we'll continue to refine it. So we know that future plans will be improved, so it's that continuous improvement approach that we're taking. But I think that's a good point in terms of we can add that into the plan, that the timescales will be refined and developed over time.
Thank you, Anne. Sorry.
Thank you, convener. Yes, thank you for this. I think that point that Michelle was making is a really important one. We have to include in any plan some way in which we're going to measure how successful it is. Otherwise, it's just warm words. So thank you for that, Michelle. there was reference there to an EPIA having been done. Is that available to us? Because I mean, other reports on the agenda today, the EPIA is actually attached to the report, and that I tend to think is good practice, but it's just.
So okay, Chair, too. So if I perhaps start and then bring in James. So we have completed a full EPIA, and we've considered that within the report. We can certainly make that available. Maybe if I chair, if it's okay to bring in James. James.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for the question, Councillor Hannah. So there is an EPIA available. It's probably still in the system just now, but EPIA was conducted, and I've put the EPIA reference down as well. Just for clarification that there is one in the system, but I'm sure, just to follow on from Caroline's point there, that we can make it available for you to view.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add, what we'll do is we'll ask for it to be circulated to members of the IJB following this meeting today.
Thank you. And of course, I've got to make a bid for East being next. I think we might have an argument about this. If you can be parochial, so can I.
I'll bring in Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. So just to say that there's quite a lot of carers voices within this, and so that just wanted to recognise that on behalf of carers. But I went down a wee bit of a rabbit hole when I was using it a little bit. Because I was thinking about carers' voices on Monday when you told us about the budget, your 15 areas for saving, thinking about like respite, travel, lack of breaks. This is all the stuff that they were talking about on Monday, issues around about their budget, not knowing how to access the budget, some chat around social workers as well, and lack of communication and things like that. So I was also looking at I appreciate the budget, and I tell the carers every single time I feed back about the budget and how challenging it is. But when I was looking at some stats around about unpaid carers, there was one done recently in 2022 where it's talking about 15.9 billion unpaid carers labour that's happening versus, so it's an increase of 19.4% since 2011 when that was done previously. So my question is, in terms of the locality plan and in terms of the budget savings that you're talking about, those 15 points, are you going to be thinking about them in tandem in terms of the impact for carers on the things that they were talking, the things that are in your budget savings? Thank you.
Who's going to come in here? Well, we start with Marie and then.
So we are developing full impact assessments around the budget savings, Caroline. Obviously that consultation's out at the moment for a 6-week period, so the preparation has started on those EPIAs, but they will be completed once we've got the consultation results back. So we are waiting for that. But they will come as part of the overall budget paper, and there will be an overall impact assessment for the full budget as well, which will consider the overall impact around protected people as well. Yeah.
Just very quickly, it's just to provide reassurance that certainly we heard the issues that were raised in terms of social work practice, and we are certainly taking that serious in terms of how we improve our practice. We've already taken steps this week, following the meeting. In terms of actually the locality plan, when we did this, we were very conscious of the budget constraints. And while it doesn't explicitly link, I think, to the consultation, we very much had the view that we were providing it within the current resource. So so I think that's referenced within the report. So hopefully that provides reassurance.
Thank you. Can I bring in Gordon?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very good and realistic plan based on what seems like an excellent process. So well done to those involved. I think some of the points I was going to raise have been raised. The only one that I did want to come back to was the EPIA, which talks about the possible negative impact on some protected characteristics, and the mitigation that's proposed seems to be around other strategies. I just wanted a little more reassurance that there will be some sort of monitoring in terms of looking to see whether that kind of potential negative impact actually does realise, so that there is a kind of ongoing awareness of that potential issue and further mitigation if it's needed.
Thank you, Chair. In terms when we reference other plans, what we were mindful of is we didn't want to duplicate. So if there was plans already ongoing about some of the priorities that we were identifying within the groups, we didn't want to duplicate. We wanted to be able to cross-reference into that. That then fed into the overall EPIA, because the priorities identified by the local delivery group are the priorities for that area. And that's where we're referencing that while we don't have timescales within the delivery plan, what we do have is how we would measure. And some of that is about the mitigation around that protected characteristic that we referenced, that James referenced. But we'll make sure that the EPIA is circulated, and if there's any questions around that, but that'll be part of the ongoing monitoring.
Thank you. And Margot.
Just really a comment again. Obviously, 5430 responses to the online survey is not terribly high, but it was good to see that 38% of respondents described themselves as service users. So I think it's very important that service users take advantage of the opportunity to do this. And I also wondered, and it's difficult because we can't predict at this stage, as we move into looking at East and West, do we predict any different sort of issues arising?
Thank you, Chair. So I actually see initially when we had the steering group where we were talking about, you know, what area will we start with? See, even from that initial discussion, it was very clear that each locality had different challenges and different priority areas. So we anticipate that actually, so the next one that we're going into is East. And transport was raised as a major issue, you know, how do you, accessibility and transport. Now that at the end of that process, it may well be that that's not a priority area, but certainly the initial discussions seem to be around accessibility, transport, how do we provide services in a more localised way, and how do we work together to do that?
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I've got Jim Flynn.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, we can't hear you at the moment. Is your microphone?
It is on, yeah. Hear me now?
Just hold on a wee minute. We'll see if we can turn it up a little bit. Sorry.
Hear me now? Better. I'll unplug the microphone.
Hold on a minute. I don't think you can see me.
Hello?
That's you now.
I've unplugged the microphone, so there we go.
Right,
Hang on, I'll take this off. Yes, I'd just like to touch on a couple of things. The consultation, you know, the numbers might seem okay, but I just feel with regard to the total population within this locality, and I do welcome the report, the numbers are very, very tiny compared to the total population. And as everybody would probably agree, the people most in need and the people that need the most guidance and help are often and more probably the ones that will not contact. In other words, they will not be proactive. So I'd probably like to see something in it. Obviously, it's early days that proactively we try and contact these hard to reach people. The other aspect I'd like to touch on actually is I work for the Carer Centre, well, not volunteer for the Carer Centre for 10 years before it was the Carer Centre and shortly after it became the Carer Centre. And one of the things I realised, and I agree with what was said about the unpaid carers, but one of the things I did realise was that years before I'd actually been a carer, you know, in my family, and I didn't realise at the time, and I think there are a lot of people out there within that catchment area that they do work with their immediate family for different things, but they're not fully aware that they come under the definition of carers and therefore don't seek either any kind of help or emotional help for themselves in the situation they're in. So I would actually like to see some further activity in that. But my main concern immediately is getting a wider view from the people most in need. And quite often with these consultations, and I'm not suggesting in this case, sometimes you get the same people who will automatically, fill in a form and that sort of thing, because it's what they like to do. So I hope these points are quite clear, but I really would like to see a better feedback in the numbers, please.
I wonder if I can just add to that about how we ensure moving forward that we involve the views and experiences of people with lived experience, if we can kind of roll that into that question as well. James, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the questions as well, Councillor Flynn. So in terms of the consultation, I think you're absolutely right, and we need to make sure we reach the hard-to-reach individuals to make sure they're able to inform plans such as this. Although we had our online survey, we also utilised local community groups within the central locality area. We had 13 in-person events, and I tried to make sure that we were reaching groups such as recovery cafes for substance use. The Senior Computers Club was one of the groups that I attended, to make sure we're reaching those individuals and getting the voice out to those individuals that maybe would not see that we are looking for feedback, and try and get that feedback. Also utilising support from CVS Falkirk as well. But I think you're right, you're absolutely right to say that we need to make sure we reach those hardest in need. We also created a drop-in at the Central Library as well, to try and find those individuals that maybe were coming into the library for their services there, to see if they could fill in the survey as well. But certainly utilising those local community groups and key contacts to share and feedback the information as well is what we tried to do on the side of the online survey that we had available. And there is a consultation report on the website, but I've tried to outline that as well as best as possible. But I just want to give you assurance that we tried our best to reach those hardest to reach individuals, and absolutely is a focus for myself as a policy officer and the team when it comes to consultation engagement, that we make sure that we do that.
Okay, no, I agree with you, and I think that will, direct the. Sorry, I think that will direct the future travel of the plan anyway. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Grace. Did you want to come in as well?
Yes, I suppose I just wanted to add, in addition to that this is the sort of formal consultation process, and it can be difficult to reach people. But actually, as part of the plan, a lot of the actions and measures that we're looking to undertake is for an ongoing consultation and getting to those people that are harder to reach. And a lot of that will be about outreach, making social work more accessible, that they are, rather than being sort of appointments, and that we're actually putting plans in place to be within our communities. So whether that's through the carer centre and having a hub type set up so people can actually come in, but actually more proactively going out to harder to reach groups who may be in contact with recovery cafes or Salvation Army type services. So that's very much a part of the plan, and I see that as being a real strength of it as we continue to develop it, that we are going to have a presence in our communities to be more accessible and keep working towards engaging with people that are hard to reach.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one final question then, with regard to particularly GP practices. I'm with one of the practices in the town centre. I won't mention it anyway, but are there posters in these practices, highlighting this activity? That's perhaps a good way to start, because, not to start, but to continue. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Caroline, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. You don't need to.
So I think we are very keen to look at how we have the voice of lived experience going forward, and we're looking at how do we set up or tap into groups that are already there so we can get that feedback. So it's just to provide reassurance around that as well.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to see if there's any more comments or questions. No, in that case, I've just been getting some revised recommendations. So are we happy to approve the draft central locality plan subject to the inclusion of timelines? Would you agree with that?
Agreed.
And we've got an additional recommendation, which isn't in your paper, to agree to issue directions at Appendix 2.2 and 3, and that will go to the relevant partners.
Agreed.
Thank you. I am going to move us on now to our next report, which is the IJB governance, and pass over to Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Chair. The report presents matters relating to the IJB Performance Audit and Assurance Committee and also an update on changes to the board membership. The Performance Audit and Assurance Committee held its first meeting on the 17th of January, and business considered the membership in terms of reference.
Excuse me.
These are outlined in section.
So I think, can you pull the microphone towards you a little bit? Some of them are not as loud, I think.
It feels very echoey in my ears, so
Yeah.
apologies for that. Do you want me to start again? No problem, thank you. So apologies for that. The report presents matters relating to the IJB Performance, Audit and Assurance Committee and an update on changes to the board membership. The Performance Audit and Assurance Committee held its first meeting on the 17th of January, and its business considered the membership in terms of reference, and these are outlined in section 4 of the report and Appendix 1. Maybe just take it back to those recommendations. So the board is asked to approve the membership at 2.1 and approve the terms of reference at 2.2. The report also provides an update on NHS Forth Valley voting members, and that's set out at 5.1 to 5.3 of the report. As a result of these, the board is asked to note at recommendations 2.3 and 2.4 that Gordon Johnston has been appointed Vice Chair from 1st of January this year and Chair from the 1st of May 2025. At 5.4 of the report, just to note that when the integration scheme is approved by Scottish ministers, the voting members on the board will increase from 6 members to 8 members, and NHS Board and Council will each appoint an additional member and will notify the board when that information is available. Lastly, pleased to note that at the Carers Voice Group meeting this week, the group nominated Elaine McGinley as the carer representative and Sharon Wall as substitute. The board is asked to approve their nominations at recommendation 2.5. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Carol-Anne Harwer for her contributions to the recruitment process and her commitment to continue to support our new carers through the induction. And pleased also that Carol-Anne is also continuing to contribute to various planning groups as a carer rep. So happy to take any questions in relation to the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before I open up to any comments or questions, so obviously I'd like to express our thanks to Carol-Anne for everything she's contributed to the board, but also for her help in that recruitment. I think it's really important that we have strong carer representation on the board, and we really appreciate everything that you've contributed. I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments. No, in that case, I'll just run through the recommendations. Are we happy to approve the membership of the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee?
Agreed.
Thank you. And to approve the terms of reference for that committee? Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you. And we're noting that Gordon has been appointed Vice Chair of the IJB from the 1st of January and will be appointed as Chair from the 1st of May. That's right, smile. And we'll approve the nominations for the position of carer representative and the nominated substitute. Thank you very much. And I'll move us on to our final report for the day. And that's the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer. I'll pass over to Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Just by way of introduction, although lots of members of the IJB will be very familiar, just to let others know that this report that's in front of you today, attached to Appendix 1, is a requirement of all Chief Social Work Officers in Scotland. So I'm provided with a template from Scottish Government and largely follow that template. The report is submitted to Scottish Government, where Government then take the opportunity to analyse all 32 annual reports from Chief Social Work Officers and produce at some point in time a summary report which is highlighting all of the particular matters of that are pertaining to be issues within social work, and we utilise that report quite widely within our own service. So this annual report was presented to Falkirk Council on the 12th of December. It was agreed and submitted to Scottish Government at that point on time and brought to the IGB. And as a result of that, it's with you today for noting. The annual report attached at Appendix 1 starts with my introduction, where I take the opportunity to state my view that effective partnership working has never felt more critical for supporting our communities. Only by working together in this way can we navigate the unprecedented pressures that we're facing. Many of those we've talked about today. We need to continue to make a meaningful difference in the lives of the people we serve. I'm noting that initiating the proposal to integrate children and families and justice social work services into the Health and Social Care Partnership represents a really important milestone in our efforts to provide more joined up, person-centred care, bringing with it opportunities to reinforce what can be achieved with stronger links, and it's really pleasing to see that report outlining the progress made on the proposal at the IGB earlier today. Section 4 of the cover report outlines the sections in the annual report, and items of note in relation to challenges and achievements are the principal challenges facing adult social work services are financial pressures and rising demand. Over the course of the past 12 months, the financial position for the Health and Social Care Partnership has become more pressing and a financial recovery plan has been implemented. The service continues to look for ways to strengthen practice, transform for improvement, and to roll out new and refreshed training and development for staff. Underpinned by our Closer to Home strategy, our ambition alongside the promise within children and families is to shift the balance of care so that more of our children are cared for in kinship care or other community-based placements rather than residential care. While we've made progress in this area over the last few years and brought Falkirk closer to the national average, we continue to experience significant barriers in this area. One key challenge has been the continued shortage of foster carers available locally and the National Transfer Scheme. In April 2023, we launched our new Advanced Practitioner and Assistant Team Manager roles. Within the workforce section of the report, I note the continued efforts by the Social Work Recruitment and Retention Working Group to stay abreast of staffing matters. Reflecting a national shortage locally, we have ongoing challenges in recruitment and retention of mental health officers. The service has successfully recruited a new permanent team manager, and a number of staff have undertaken their mental health officer training. They've now qualified, which is fantastic, but this remains an area of ongoing focus and improvement. Amongst a number of successes recognised internally for our staff and teams, we attracted national recognition at the SSC Awards, with the Joint Dementia Initiative and Caledonia Service being awarded excellence within mental health services, while Falkirk Council's Women's Service, our Women's Justice Service, to be clear, was awarded excellence in justice category. And the Falkirk Learning Disability team was also a finalist within the excellence in disability services category. The training, learning and development section of the report demonstrates the continued commitment to we make to our valued workforce. Training priorities are developed from horizon scanning and staying abreast of national developments, and by understanding what is needed locally from a training needs analysis that we've outlined in the report this year. Evaluation of training and the learning taken back into our business is essential, and quotes contained in the report give you a flavour of the impact our investment has on the people that we trust to work with our communities day to day. The annual report thanks and commends the outstanding commitment from our social care workforce, partners, carers and colleagues. Alongside Martin and others, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think I've had the benefit of also seeing this report at Council, and I think every time I see it, the depth and the breadth of work across this district in terms of social work and social care is just incredible, and I think that point about it being strongly recognised at a national level some of the work that is going on as the excellence of some of the, well, the excellence of all the work, but the particular excellence of that work. I think I'm sure the board would want to take the opportunity to really thank all the staff and council in the council health and social care partnership and in the third and independent sector, and of course unpaid carers for the work that they have done over the period of that board of that report. I think the passion for the work is unrivalled, and I'd like to just express that thanks. But I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments. Caroline.
Just, it's not really questions time, thank you, Chair. It's just a couple of comments, if that's okay, on behalf of carers. I appreciate, obviously, there's been challenges ongoing with social work, getting staff recruited into those roles, but there's still quite a significant wait once the carer support plan's done, waiting then for the referral to come, for the appointments with social work to discuss those plans. And the second point is just around about the self-directed support. I think carers are still really struggling with what that means and how they can use that self-directed support. They were talking about that again on Monday at Carers Voices. So I just wanted to mention those two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne.
Thank you, convener. I would echo the thanks to all the staff who have done the work, a huge amount of work in this area, and it often unsung heroes. So well done to all of them, and well done for your report, which I have also already had an opportunity to consider. But one particular point I would like to raise is in relation to the alcohol and drug partnership. I'm involved in a cross-party group on alcohol and drug related deaths on a Scottish basis. And one of the things that we're looking at is the importance not just to talk about drug deaths, but also alcohol deaths. And I know from discussions with the lead officer for that's beginning to move into the forefront. So I think it is quite important always to deal in both the alcohol and drug-related deaths. Both are higher than any of us would like to see. But the other thing that I have discussed with the lead officer and I would like to see in the report is looking at those situations where there was a near miss, where the death was avoided, because it seems to me that there's a really big learning opportunity there in terms of what was done, what were the services involved in that enabled that to be averted. So that's just my two comments on the alcohol and drug related bit. And I would just also like to say on foster carers, calling on everybody out there who might be interested, because I know that that's a huge issue for families. We can keep young people in their local communities if we have more foster carers.
Thank you. Sarah, I don't know if you want to come back on any of those points.
Perhaps just some recognition that the Falkirk ADP executive has on alcohol harms. So thank you for raising that particular point, because as an executive, we were very aware recently of the focus on drug-related deaths and drug harms. And of course, that is absolutely of critical importance. But there's a national agenda which brings with it a lot of priorities that have come into the ADP existence. But we were very clear together as a group that we needed to ensure that our alcohol and drug partnership had equal focus on alcohol harms, and to give assurance we have heard as an executive about the activity that is happening in Forth Valley and in Falkirk around alcohol harms. We just need to ensure that it's prevalence and that there's awareness of the work that has been undertaken that is available to members and communities and public. So thank you. We are attending to that particular matter.
Thank you, Sarah.
And thank you, Convener.
Michelle.
Thank you, Fiona. This is, I say this every year probably, this is a really good report. It's really informative, and I think what it does do is it shares all those areas of good practice and areas that require further consideration, so it's really good. I do have a question about child protection though, if that's okay. Why do you think that Falkirk has consistently higher rates than the national average for child protection registrations?
Thank you, Chair. So we have quite a stubbornly high number of children who are on the Child Protection Register. What I can say about that is that we work together with improvement activity to understand when we have high numbers on the Child Protection Register and when numbers reduce on the Child Protection Register. There's no exact reasoning within an evidence base that it's a good thing to have low numbers or is it a better thing to have high numbers. So what we do within the Child Protection Committee is ensure that our improvement group is constantly attending to understand the reasons why we either have lower numbers or higher numbers. We clearly benchmark ourselves against other areas and we pay attention both within the Child Protection Committee, within subgroups and also within the Public Protection Chief Officers Group to understand the reasons why. A simple factor on occasion to rising child protection registrations can be a large sibling group. We also try to understand where we might have children who are deregistered and then re-registered within a particularly short time frame. So there is very careful analysis. There is frequent reporting on analysis within the CPC and within the Child Protection Chief Officers Group. And there is typically reassurance that we have an understanding of why our numbers are moving in a particular way. But there is something quite interesting within Falkirk District in terms of just how many challenges we have and just how high we can be when we benchmark ourselves against others, not just within child protection registration, so within drug-related deaths, for example, as just previously mentioned. So in terms of bringing our strategic priorities together, just as we were talking about earlier, around integration, making sure that we're targeting our resources in all of the right places to make the biggest difference in the areas that we absolutely need to attend to, I think there is a strong focus of how we move forward to make sure we're bringing all of our community planning into the right spaces and all of our attention and resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Margot.
Right, can I just commend all the work that's gone on preparing this and the all-encompassing nature of it. Or, 99.9% is always something. But I just wanted to commend the involvement of Care Opinion, which as an organisation I've been sort of familiar with, and they have moved completely to the HSCP. And I think if they're continuing with what they do, it's a wonderful way of people being able to raise concerns and know that they will be looked into without any sort of prejudice to future care. And I think, it's a wonderful way of making sure that if anything is requiring a little more investigation, it goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I would agree that Care Opinion is an excellent resource and for individuals to raise concerns and also to highlight when things have gone well. But I've heard some of the actions that have happened as a result of care opinion in a number of different bodies. So I think it's an excellent resource. Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. I was my previous role in child protection and adult protection, and also working suicide prevention and drug-related deaths. I think the links in there to poverty are very clear, and I suppose as we go forward as a partnership, being very mindful of that, because I think, you know, that's maybe a reason for, you know, some of those higher instances of relation to child protection, and certainly I found, having worked a lot in suicide prevention while I was here operationally, it's a very stubborn figure to move, sadly, those sort of deaths of despair that we see. So I suppose going forward, just drawing out those links, and if anything that we can do as a partnership that moves into that space where we try to alleviate poverty, particularly child poverty, you know, we'd hopefully see some moves in that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, and a point well made, and I think that in terms of both the council and the NHS and the community planning partnership, poverty and alleviating poverty is a key priority, and I think very much links into the work of the partnership. Are there any further comments or questions? No, in that case, are we happy to acknowledge the commitment, skills and experience of staff continuing to deliver services in challenging circumstances?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And that's our final report for today. Thank you everyone for coming along and contributing, and we will see you at the next meeting.